Ozempic is a synthetic form of what your body naturally does.
It's synthetically blocking the transmitters.
Yeah, it's telling your body that you're full before you are full.
What, in your words, are the risks of Ozempic?
We don't know for sure, but I feel as though the potential risks are...
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to the Into the Mind podcast. Today we have a very exciting day because we have Genna Nelson on the show. Now, Genna Nelson is a nutritional therapist, and in this podcast she talks a lot about Ozempic, about the risks to Ozempic, about what Ozempic actually does to the body, essentially how it works. She also covers some really interesting details around saffron. It is super strange to say, but saffron, the spice, can actually be used as a natural SSRI, which is a serotonin reuptaker, which is essentially an antidepressant, a natural antidepressant. It really shocked me, that stat and the studies linked to it. It's seriously incredible. There's so much more of that brilliant information crammed in to this episode, so I'm sure you guys are going to learn a lot. But before we start getting into it, if you could do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button, 5-star button, follow button, whatever it is, wherever you are, I'd really appreciate it. It helps us so much more than you know. And the more subscribers, 5 stars, whatever it is we get, the more incredible guests we can get on the show. Without further ado, my name is Harrison Brown. This is the Into the Mind podcast, and let's welcome Genna Nelson. So, what have you been up to?
I have been writing.
Yes.
I write for a supplement brand, so I'm heavily into they have a compliance team.
Okay.
So I have to make sure that all my T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. I get asked to talk about things, but I'm not allowed to actually talk about them. So I have to talk around the houses and use the evidence and the science to... So one of the things, I can't use the word anti-inflammatory.
Why?
Because it's a health claim. So I have to talk about inflammation, but in a very sciencey way. But then the content's for consumers. So that there's a very difficult line to straddle between what's palatable and easy to understand for the consumer, but what's also evidence. So it's a bit of a skill.
But an anti-inflammatory, that would be... So why wouldn't you be allowed to say that, though?
Because to say something is anti-inflammatory is implying that you, through taking a particular product, can reduce inflammation, which ironically you are doing. You know, if you take an omega-3 product, you are reducing the inflammation levels. But I think they just deem it as a health claim. So that whole sort of supplement industry is heavily regulated. So you just have to be careful what you're saying.
That's kind of... Is it censored to the point of like the marketing speech? It's controlled?
Yes.
So let's say you've got Stephen Bartlett. I think we talked about Stephen Bartlett last time.
We did.
But if he were to get he does adverts for some of these companies, would it be heavily regulated in terms of what you can and can't say?
Well, it's an interesting thing because it's not regulation in terms of an official body. It's through the ASA. Have you heard of the ASA? So the Advertising Standards Authority.
Yes.
So as a practitioner, if I make a claim like, take product A and that will cure you of your heart disease, and I put that on my website, they will come after me for making false claims and blacklist my website, make it very difficult for me to market myself. So they can do a lot of damage for product companies who rely on consumers seeing their content. So it's an odd one.
But like, at what point do they step in? Because if it's evidence based, did the ASA say, okay, that's fine?
If you can, there's been a number of companies that have had to fight their position, so they have put something out that is evidenced. I feel like it's the ASA, what they say goes. They have the final say. We just have to be really careful what we're saying, which frustrates the hell out of me, because then on the flip side, you've got medical intervention where there is damage. You know, you don't get something for nothing. There's always a knock-on effect. They can just freely say that something can result in outcome A and just make health claims all over the place because it's a health product, like a health regulated product.
Yeah, I think there's a sting in the tail in a lot of these so-called miracle drugs. And I'm lucky that I can say what I want because
Yes.
because I'm not in the industry. But like, I think that Naveed said this himself, who was on the podcast maybe 2 episodes ago from here, but he said there will probably be, from Ozempic, a sting in the tail.
Yeah.
Because you don't get something for nothing. It's never the case. There's not an easy fix to anything. And with the good will come a degree of bad.
Yeah.
You know, vaping is healthier than smoking. We're now finding out actually it's potentially more harmful because it's potentially more addictive.
Yeah.
There's like a sting in the tail of a lot of these things.
Yeah.
How regulated is it? Like, have you got examples of how censored it is?
So the whole natural health community as a whole globally is very censored. And we can get into why I think that is. When you take ownership back for your health and you advocate for you, you're not then using pharmaceuticals, you're not using that
Money.
healthcare system. Yeah, you're not playing into that game. So you're kind of worthless to them. To be bold about it, they want you fat and sick. So if you're overweight and ill, you are reliant on that system to keep that system going. But the moment that you start to advocate for yourself and take your health back under your control, I think that makes you dangerous to a system that relies on you playing into it. And that's my opinion. And from the people that I've worked with, I can see where they start to take their health back, that they start to pull away from that system.
It's control, isn't it? Well,
Yes.
that's how I feel about it anyway. I feel that if they can control you through you being sick or them feeding you absolute crap that's going to make you sick, then they kind of, you're malleable. They know that you're going to move in a certain direction.
Yes.
They kind of know you're going to go that way.
The outcomes are fairly predictable.
Exactly.
But someone who has agency and ownership of their own mind is not predictable. They then become a risk because you don't know what way that person's going to go, because they now have free agency to do what they want with their health. So it's very much a 2-tier system, and it's a difficult thing because not everyone has the awareness to recognise that they are actually indoctrinated into a system that will just keep them stuck in that
loop.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like they don't teach you about taxes in school.
Well, no.
But it's the same kind of thing. Like they deliberately make things more difficult, in my opinion, because realistically in school you should have a class on taxes. I still don't fully understand taxes.
I don't think anyone does.
I don't think anyone does, but that's not right.
No.
But it's part of a system to get you in debt, and then all of a sudden you work your way out of debt. You eventually maybe rent or buy a property, and then all of a sudden when you die, they take half of it, or maybe get your property. So it's like it's all feeding back into the same loop, into the same system. I
truly believe, and I'm seeing this, and I know this in myself. I know that people are waking up to that. They're seeing that rat race, that game, is not sustainable. You can't win it. You don't win. So what happens when you take your agency back and you decide, I won't go to university. I'll go straight into working for myself or learning, doing the kind of thing where you're learning on the job. So you're building skills and building wealth through other means other than, buying your first house, staying in it long enough that it makes a profit and then passing it on to your children. It's not to say that that's wrong, but there's infinite other ways to have a meaningful life. And I do think that people are waking up to the story that we've been sold that's just a bit of a lie.
Oh, it's a total lie.
Yeah.
But I think that's where the social media, as much as it can be a toxic place, and as much that I mean, we're talking about the social logins and me giving my social logins to someone else to post just there, but it's quite good for specific people spreading information that's actually beneficial. Like you don't need university. If you want to be a doctor, maybe you do, but if you want to be something in the creative field, you probably don't. There's nothing that university could have taught me in photography and videography that I don't already know now. So it's not necessarily needed. It's weird. If you follow the money of anything, you can normally see the agenda.
Yes.
And like, I just want to make it very clear. I had the vaccines for COVID. I regret it, but I needed them. But if you follow the money of where everything was going for that COVID vaccine, you can see the agenda was with the pharmaceutical companies.
The whole idea of that was reliant on fear. So once you've hijacked that fear part of the brain, the amygdala, I think it is, that fear part, you can manipulate that person to do, and that may or may not happen. Who's to know what happened? But definitely it's powerful when you can hijack the fear part of their brain. You can make them do what you need them to do. But someone who's not in fear, who's fully embodied in themselves and fully awake, can't be controlled. Mm-hmm. And then they take their agency and their power back. I do feel like society is moving that way. It's sort of little by little, and people are waking up at different points, and they're realising, and I definitely feel over the last 5 years it's been a tipping point for people who were maybe quite indoctrinated into the system pre-2020. Now 5 years on, they're asking questions that they maybe weren't asking, a lot of them around health as well. Why are health outcomes becoming worse and worse? Mm-hmm. We're living longer, but we're living with ill health for longer.
Yeah. The quality of life is
supposed to be. Yeah. So you've got health span versus lifespan, and now you've got tremendous pressure on our healthcare system. But there's no mechanism at a policy level to enable people to take the burden off. It's just like, just jab this thing into you, that will solve the problem. But we don't know what we're stacking up for future.
Yeah, like, yeah, it could be like in the interim, the short term, maybe a 5-year. I don't even want to say fix, because it's not a fix. It's like
it's a short term.
Yeah, tool. It's a really short term tool. Yeah. For potentially making it worse down the line.
I always say it's like putting a sticking plaster over a stab wound. you get the analogy, right? No, it's just never going. It's not going to hold it together. It's like, and I think we societally are just engineered to look at short-term fixes. Where the type of work that I do is very much root causes. So in functional medicine, we're looking at root causes. Why do things happen? They don't just happen for no reason. And if we'll talk about Ozempic. If Ozempic's just turning down the noise, the problems that the root causes behind all that, they're still there. They haven't gone anywhere. So when you remove the drug, that noise just becomes louder. And we don't have the long-term evidence or data to know what the impact of that actually is. So like working where I do, I'm at very much, you call it grassroots level. So I'm at I suppose if you were to think about the waterfall analogy in the river, Ozempic's pulling people out further downstream. So yes, it's helping deal with the obesity side of things, and it is a tool for that. So you're pulling people out downstream, whereas I'm upstream asking them, well, why are you being thrown in the first place? Let's not throw you in.
Yeah.
And it's two sides of the same coin, I think.
Well, it takes, I think my analogy here is it takes a long time to get sick. Mm-hmm. It also takes a long time to get healthy. Mm. There's no fix. No. There's no instant fix. You can't do it. It's like, you know what, if you look at people that are in great shape, it wasn't like they clicked their fingers and got in great shape. They've probably been working out for years. Yeah. And then they've all of a sudden said, right, I'm going to properly diet and cut.
Well, what you're seeing is a physical representation of commitment, resilience, because it isn't easy to maintain that in the face of all your environmental stimulus that's working against you, maintaining that level of health. Your conditioning, even conditioning amongst families. So if you're the one in the family that does value your health, but the rest of your family members don't, that's a lot of pressure to maintain your ground. Yeah. And for a lot of people that I've worked with, they don't know how good can feel because they've never experienced it. And from my experience, and you've probably had this too, once you get a dose of how good that feels, you do not want to let it go. Yeah. And so if you've never experienced that because of your circumstance or your environment, you are set up for a difficult time, but it's not, I don't feel like that's the answer. That's not the complete resolution. There's so much more to this.
100%. There was a pal of mine, I won't mention his name, but his mum's on Ozempic. And I said, how's she getting on? Like, is she feeling that it's working? Is she losing weight? And she is losing weight, but he said, I know for a fact that as soon as she comes off it, she's just going to gain the weight back again. Yeah. So it's like, she knows that as well, because there's obviously underlying stuff
there will be,
that's going on. What exactly does Ozempic do?
So Ozempic is a GLP-1 antagonists. So our bodies make GLP-1, which is a hormone that helps to regulate insulin levels. It helps to regulate digestion. So it works in concert with two other hormones called leptin and ghrelin. I don't know if you've heard of it. So ghrelin sounds like gremlin to me. So this is how I remember it. So ghrelin is your hunger hormone.
Right.
So shortly before you go to eat, you'll get your hunger signal. So that's ghrelin giving the signal to the brain that you're hungry. Yeah, all of those things that start your digestion. So you get hunger signals, it increases your hunger. You eat some food and, partway through that meal, your body releases GLP-1. So it releases it from your gut and it sends a signal to the brain that you're currently eating and to start to begin to regulate your appetite, regulate your insulin levels. So it releases GLP-1 and then you come to the end of the meal, your body then releases leptin. So what leptin does is the opposite of ghrelin, it then suppresses your appetite. Okay. So this is where you get the fullness signal. So theoretically, you should start to get the 80% full feeling quite soon into your meal if you're eating slow enough. We'll come back to when people don't eat slow enough, they don't get that signal. So the body releases leptin, it downregulates your appetite, tells you you're full, then you stop eating. And then that cycle just repeats. So leptin, ghrelin and GLP-1 all work together to regulate all the processes that go around digestion, metabolism, fat storage, fat burning, insulin regulation. So Ozempic is a synthetic form of what your body naturally does.
So not gremlin.
Not gremlins.
Leptin.
So it's GLP-1.
Or GLP-1, right.
Yeah. So it works on the receptors, the GLP-1 receptors, to synthetically receive that signal to tell your body that you're full. So what that's doing is, so people who are on Ozempic or on semaglutide or whatever brand they're on, they get the full signal with eating far less volume of food. So invariably they are reducing their calorific input.
Synthetic. So it's like it's synthetically blocking the transmitters.
Yeah, it's telling your body that you're full before you are full.
Okay.
I have a conflict with that because I'm always looking at, well, why? Why would you want to do that? So in some people, they can have leptin dysfunction. So that leptin signal just doesn't kick in. So they never, their hunger gets upregulated and they never get the satiated feeling. So I don't know if you know anyone like this. I certainly know a few who they just keep eating and eating and eating. They just never get that full. A lot of that. If you're eating just carbohydrates and refined foods, you will just keep eating and eating and eating because it's really difficult to fill up on carbohydrates, refined carbs. But I don't know if you've experienced this. If you have a steak and some veggies, it's pretty hard to keep eating beyond, because you're full. Yeah. And that's where you get that satiated feeling. So for people who eat, they just inhale their food. They're eating much quicker than that signal can kick in. So I try and get people to, I'm the slowest eater in the world. I'm usually the last person, if we go out for dinner, I'm still eating. Because I'll put my cutlery down between each mouthful because I've trained myself to slow down in all areas of my life, actually, not just eating, but all areas. Just slow the hell down. And it gives me anxiety when I'm around people who are just shoveling food and they're just take a breath. So it's a cycle, so it just keeps repeating round and round. So what Ozempic's doing is sort of bypassing that cycle to give a sort of fake or synthetic signal to the body to stop eating. So they're basically eating less food.
And what... I suppose you're right in saying that the studies haven't been done over a period of time in which we know what it actually does in the long term, because it's a very, very new thing. It's a very new drug. What, in your words, are the risks of Ozempic? Chisholm Hunter, Chisholm Hunter, Chisholm Hunter. Let's talk about our primary sponsors of the podcast, which are Chisholm Hunter. Now, Chisholm Hunter is a family-run luxury retailer that's been going for over 165 years. They specialize in luxury watches and they're world-renowned for their luxury diamonds. Now, if you're anything like me, you'll be a bit of an avid watch collector. And luckily enough, Chisholm Hunter are actually official stockists of most brands like Omega, Tudor, Tag Heuer, Vacheron Constantin, and many many more. Now, if you are into watch collecting, you'll know that you really should only get a luxury watch from a trusted, authorized retailer. And that's where Chisholm Hunter come in. They've literally got 165 years of experience, and they are the trusted partner that I use to buy my luxury watches. Unfortunately, guys, there's just so many fakes kicking around now. So if you're looking for something for yourself or a loved one, head to chisholmhunter.co.uk or head to one of their 29 boutiques throughout the UK. And while you're there, use the discount code CHSUB, that is CHSUB, for an exclusive 10% off selected lines. That is the Chisholm Hunter website, chisholmhunter.co.uk, and the discount code is CHSUB, CHSUB, on the Chisholm Hunter website. And without further ado, let's get back to this conversation with Genna.
We don't know for sure, but I feel as though the potential risks are malnourishment. So there's lots of things. Oh, you're going back to the emotional side of this, but definitely if you're eating less food. So, first of all, how many people who are on these drugs are actually changing their diet? Are they just eating the same food that led them to being overweight or obese in the first place? They're just eating less volume. So they're still eating the same foods. So they're already likely undernourished.
Yeah.
Then you restrict the stomach, which is what this is doing. It's like a gastric sleeve in essence. It's making the stomach smaller, because the less food you eat, the smaller the stomach will become. It will just shrink. Because of where we absorb our nutrients, are we limiting then things like B12, iron, protein, where we absorb protein, or zinc, minerals? So
I didn't think of that.
So if they're already, I position it as this. I think people who are living with obesity, or they're in that kind of category, they're overfed and undernourished. There's definitely a malnourished perspective to this. And you might laugh because you think, well, you don't look like you're malnourished. But you're actually undernourished because you're not eating nutrient-dense food if you're eating highly processed.
And then if you cut that to like a quarter of
the food you're still malnourished.
And you're going to get less nutrients from that food because there's obviously less of it.
Mm-hmm.
I've never thought of that. So if you lose weight without dieting, you can regulate what you have. And dieting, you can say, well, I'm going to eat an apple and salad today without, the carbs because I'm dieting.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're on Ozempic and you're still eating the pizzas and pastas,
you don't change your diet. You're still eating the same food-like substances. Yeah.
And I suppose, well, the question that leads to then is, let's say I'm on Ozempic for like, I don't know, a year and a half. I'm just going to guess that's a typical time, maybe like a year and a half, 2 years. And I'm not getting the vitamins that I need. What could that then lead to?
That can lead to a lot of chronic conditions. So if you're undernourished as you go into this, and then you become even more undernourished or malnourished, you need nutrients to make your brain function, to make your heart pump properly, to build muscle, to keep your lungs, to keep your metabolism going. We need to eat. So my conflict with this is it is a sticking plaster. So if you're not fundamentally changing any of the habits that have led to the reason why you're now taking Ozempic, you aren't changing anything. You might be losing weight. Are you also losing muscle mass? I mean, there's studies that are showing with the injectables, you're losing lean weight. So you're losing fat and muscle.
But does that not happen with any diet?
It does. You do. But you're losing weight quicker.
Right, so you're losing muscle quicker as well.
But it would stand to reason you're losing muscle quicker, yeah. And then if you're not in a kind of ecosystem where you're understanding that you also need to be building muscle too, so you need to be strength training to maintain your muscle and then try and ideally build muscle too. But if you can't eat as much protein, how are you then going to build muscle? How are you going to maintain the muscle without losing? And then that leads to things like sarcopenia. So in older people, sarcopenia is where they're vulnerable to frailty because they don't have the muscle on their skeleton.
That was going to be my next question, because obviously when you get older, you start to lose muscle. Naturally that kind of happens 35 and then go onwards, maybe 40 onwards, you start to lose muscle density and mass. And that's why older people are that little bit more frail. Yeah. If you're to, let's say you're 40 or 50 and you start taking Ozempic, you'll lose your muscle a lot faster. And then as a result of that, when you come off Ozempic, you'll be a lot more prone to injury.
Yes.
Which I'm going to guess is going to shorten your lifespan.
Yeah.
Like you look at my gran broke her hip. She probably passed away 6 months to a year later.
Yeah.
Because that's quite normal.
Yeah.
Like when someone breaks something like that,
the recovery is much more difficult. Yeah.
Exactly. So like, I'm going to guess that that's probably one of the main risks there. Is the fact you're losing so much muscle at that age where it's going to be harder to recover.
And the danger is if the people who are drawn to this kind of medication are drawn for vanity reasons, so that they're not living with obesity, they're maybe a kilo or 2 or 3 kilos overweight, and they've found that difficult to shift because they haven't changed any habits, and they then go down that medical route and they don't change anything else in their life, they'll lose what muscle mass they had that was protective. They'll lose fat too, but potentially once they come off of it, they'll get rebound weight gain, but without the muscle coming back. So potentially, are they putting themselves in a position where they're worse off after the injection than they were? Because that little bit of body fat is actually protective to some degree.
Yeah.
I don't know. And these are the questions we don't have answers to.
Again, though, if you follow the money, it's like,
well,
it's a great miracle drug if you follow the money, because everyone's making a lot. I know a couple of people that work in, I don't want to say specifically, but there's online pharmacies. They have rocketed in terms of money made, and it's purely because of Ozempic and all the different, there's different strains of it. So it's purely because of that. They were like, listen, we used to sell a lot of drugs for different things, but this Ozempic thing is like, it's just like, and everyone is making a fortune, which is really, really scary.
It is.
You were talking about vanity there. I wrote something down. You know how there was this celebrity thing in Hollywood where everyone was very body positive and they were supportive of their larger brother and sisters? I think they've just all shot themselves in the foot. Like it just shows the facade of Hollywood. Oprah Winfrey, Sharon Osbourne, Amy Schumer, Elon Musk, Chelsea Handler, Tracy Morgan, Kelly Clarkson, all of these people are on Ozempic and they've said that they're on Ozempic. And it just goes to show that they're just taking the easy route out.
Yeah.
They wanted inclusion because they couldn't, in my opinion, they wouldn't put in the effort to lose the weight.
Yeah. And they maybe also, I don't know if inclusion's the right word, but takes vulnerability and courage to be the one that's like not going with the flow, to go against the grain and say this. I'm not saying that body positivity is a load of nonsense. It's not. But if you're doing it in a performative way, and I see a lot of this, there's performative wellness, and I wouldn't even put Ozempic in wellness. I think it doesn't fall in that category, but you see a lot on Instagram and social media about performative stuff where on the outside it looks like they're doing all the things. As a practitioner, I can see that they're not doing the things. They're just looking like they are.
So it's almost like the validation of Instagram.
Yeah, so you get that quick clip that looks like you go to the gym 6 days a week, but in reality, you maybe go for 30 minutes once a week.
Yeah.
It's fake, and I think that time has come to an end. And we were talking about this. Although we've got this Ozempic injectable weight loss explosion, I think it will die down because, like anything, it's a new trend. It's got energy behind it.
Yeah. And all the celebs are taking it as well.
When we're seeing how ill they look, they do not look well at all, and that's not good for their brand, and it's not good for marketing. So what you're starting to see is the longer that these celebs are on them, you're actually starting to see the side effects.
Yeah.
And they're playing out in a very public way. There will always be sections of society that just don't care. They're just like, I want my quick win. I want to lose a kilo for my summer holiday.
But I think that's the danger. Like, I think I said this to Naveed as well. I'm very skeptical of any miracle drug because I do what you do. I start following the money and then researching it. And when you start researching something and there's tons of blank space besides the negatives because nobody actually knows, I'm thinking, oh, fuck, like something will come out.
Well, it's an experiment.
Yeah.
It's a real life in time experiment. And I don't know if I would want to be part of something that we don't know the outcomes of.
Yeah. Some would say a little bit like the vaccine.
Well, that was experimental too. And now we are seeing, 5 years down the line, we're seeing the impact. In sections of society, we're seeing the impact of that. But we're too much water under the bridge. Nothing will happen. Nothing will change. So for me, it's about, I don't know, personally taking back your own agency and realising, do I want to play this game? Or I'm very holistic and natural, obviously, because it's the kind of job I do. I want to understand, well, how do I help my body do this? So if your body naturally makes GLP-1, what's gone awry? How do I fix it? What do I do to get underneath the hood and give my body what it needs to get that balance back again? Because your body is always striving for what we call homeostasis, which is balance. And you need a certain amount of stress. So your body needs what we call hermetic stress. So it's a certain amount of physical stress on the body. So being metabolically flexible, which means that you can flex in and out of different ways of eating. You might fast, you might not fast, you might eat higher protein, you might up your carbs, depends on your activity. That makes us metabolically adaptable and flexible. My concern is with something like Ozempic, you're overriding the body's signals. Will we in the long run lose the ability in our genetics to actually flex in and out? Will we just become obese because that's what we've told our genes, that we're just constantly overweight and undernourished?
And I suppose, what does it do to your body's chemical, those natural signals after you stop it? Because I don't think, at least from my perspective, I've not seen a study that shows the chemical imbalances after you stop taking Ozempic.
Because they don't know, because we haven't studied it for long enough.
But that's the, like, I think that, like, listen, if you are bedbound and you're so obese that you can't get up, you can't physically make the moves, the positive moves to start losing weight, you're going to be sick whichever way you swing it. So you'd potentially rather take Ozempic so that you can make those moves to become slim. I kind of get that. But what I don't get is, for example, these celebrities or people that want to lose a kilo for their holiday, or I sometimes think that the oldest methods are the best because they've been around for thousands of years. And the reason that they've been around for thousands of years is because they work. Like my brother had something wrong with his shoulder, and for like 2 years he was going in and out of physio, in and out of the doctors. Like, it was really bothering him. He couldn't do any kind of weight, so he couldn't do anything. It was screwed. And then he eventually was, I need an operation on this. And my mum said, before you get an operation, go and do acupuncture, because you've got nothing to lose. It's one more test. It's, who cares if it doesn't work? You're going to get an operation anyway. He went, and within a month it was fixed.
Incredible.
And that's one of the oldest methods. And a lot of people think that's like a you know, not fake, but kind of like a facade.
I think that's what science has done to what I do falls into what we call alternative. But to my mind, it's not alternative, it's common sense. But I think that's what modern science has been incredible in a lot of ways. But what it's done is it's flipped it to people now feel uncomfortable talking about things like nutrition or acupuncture, and they see it as woo-woo.
That's exactly it.
And
that's
it's
the word.
really not. And to speak to what you've said about your brother, it was your brother,
Yeah. My brother, and then I went for my back, and it sorted my back because I carry around the bloody camera bag. And it totally fixed it. But again, a lot of my friends, I'm like, I got acupuncture, and they're like, oh, like acupuncture. And I'm like, well, there's a reason it's been around for so long. There's a reason that it's still here when everything else starts fading away. And these trends, like you said, like Ozempic, it will fade off. It will. But it's the after effects, it's the knock-on effect. Do you think that it will have a effect on your metabolism after you stop taking it?
I do, yeah. I think, well, naturally when you lose weight, you are changing your metabolism. So your basal metabolic rate, your BMR, it will alter to adjust to that weight loss. But if you don't change anything else, so your activities, so you're still sedentary, you haven't increased your protein, you haven't changed anything, that then makes sense that it's just, you've just lowered it. So how do you keep the weight off then? If you haven't changed your diet, you've now, you'll go back to your original diet, but your BMR's lower. So you're just going to, theoretically, pile that weight back on again.
Yeah, as soon as you stop taking it.
I see Ozempic as a tool in a toolbox. And I see that it has short-term benefits, like you're saying, the individual that's bedbound, for sure.
Yeah.
That's a tool for that individual. But I don't think it should be used across the board, and it isn't appropriate for everybody.
Yes.
And my fear is the way that it's taken society by storm. People who are accessing it from their pharmacy probably don't need it. They just need to.
Well, especially it's an online pharmacy.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got things from an online pharmacy before. It's, what's your symptoms? And you just write what they want to hear. And then it's like, it's really not hard.
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking from experience here. I've never been on Ozempic. But like, I could quite easily go into an online pharmacy today. And if I was paying, however much Ozempic is, they'd take my money.
They would.
You can get, because you follow the money, you 100%. How many different types of Ozempic? Because Ozempic's like the brand, right?
Yeah. Well, it's semaglutide is the drug, I believe. So Ozempic is the lower dose. I can't remember the exact dosage. And then you've got Wegovy, which I think is maybe double the dose.
Okay.
But then I believe there's newer ones. And then you've got the whole sort of black market stuff where people are buying it off of Facebook Marketplace and they don't know what they're buying and they could be injecting anything.
Well, that's because the NHS don't have enough of it. There's a shortage of it.
It's just terrifying.
It's terrifying because you don't know who's regulating it, really. And then why would you inject something into yourself that you don't know what it is?
And to say that the manufacturer of the drug was taken by surprise, I don't buy that at all. I do not see how they would know what consumers are looking for. They're wanting a quick fix. And that fits the bill. You just inject this thing and you don't have to change anything else in your life and you will lose weight. That to me is frightening.
That's terrifying because it's just not, it's not factual. Like so what would be the steps? Let's say there's
if you
someone
want to do it holistically.
Yes. So let's say there's someone that's listening to this podcast. They're thinking about going on Ozempic, but they're listening to this and thinking, actually, potentially, I'm going to give everything else a go before I do that.
Yeah.
What would be your steps to start to change the behaviors? Because that's really what it is, right? In order to start that process of losing weight.
So the people that I work with, they want information. So I'm wired that way too. I want to know why something is the way it is. I'm not satisfied until I know why. So I did more training in nutrigenomics, which, if you separate out the word, is nutri is nutrition, genomics is genes. And it's the science of looking at how your diet and lifestyle interacts with your genes. So we're all born with a set of genetics. Your genes never change. So what does change is how they express. So your diet and your lifestyle can either switch genes on that are dormant or switch them off. So what nutrigenomics does is it looks at someone's blueprint. So I basically can get a printout of that person's genetic profile and see. So there's a report called the metabolics report, and that looks at how well does that person regulate insulin, how sensitive is their leptin, how well does their ghrelin operate, how well do they regulate their blood sugar? Is
that through like a blood test?
It's a mouth swab.
A mouth swab,
and you
right.
only, because you have your genes for life and they never change, you only need to do the mouth swab once.
Right.
And then there's 11 different reports. So you can look at anything from thyroid to nervous system. A lot of people look at nervous system for ADHD. So I've had a couple of clients that they want to know what their dopamine's doing. So we can look at that. So I would start with their genetics. I'd want to know what their genetic hardwiring is for metabolic flexibility. How well do they do all those processes that we talked about? And once we have that, what that's telling us is what and why. And once you know what and why, you now know what to do because it's on the report. So we use a lot of cofactors, minerals or cofactors, things like magnesium, zinc, B6. Does that person have enough of those cofactors to help facilitate those genetic processes? So we look at their diet. Are they eating enough protein? So protein and fibre for me are the two staples. So I think we talked about this last time. You need protein to make amino acids, and you need amino acids to make dopamine and then all your neurotransmitters. So yeah, look at diet first. So make sure they've got adequate protein, fat, good carbohydrates. Get the refined junk out because those are anti-nutrients, so they're robbing your body of nutrients. Get the alcohol out. I'm sorry to say there's no good amount of alcohol.
Yeah.
And particularly if you're thinking about fat loss, and I wouldn't say weight loss because weight loss is something different, but fat loss, whilst your insulin's high, you're not burning fat. It's pure biology. So your insulin's high when you drink alcohol because it's just turned into pure sugar. So you think about it.
So if you have pure sugar, you're never going to burn fat.
Well, because you're keeping your insulin high. So your body can never tap into fat burning because your insulin's just,
I wonder if it probably is the reason. A lot of people that I knew when they went to university especially gained a lot of weight. And I was talking about it with my pals literally on Saturday when we fell asleep on the couch, welcome to 30. But yeah, I was talking to them. There was a picture of us back in the day, and my pals were like, "Oh my God, we were so much bigger then." And I've remained quite constant, but it's because I never went to university, so I never had that humongous spike in drink. Well, I drank, but I didn't as much as them probably. I was quite constant. But then as soon as they felt, the exciting thing is, as soon as they fell out of the university lifestyle and they started getting back into a good pattern, they lost all the weight again.
Interesting.
So it is doable. You know what I mean? Like I've had friends that have lost like 3, I think my pal lost like 3 stone.
Wow.
Just from
cutting alcohol out.
Cutting alcohol and tailoring his diet. Like he probably, like looking at it from an outsider, he maybe didn't do it in as healthy a way as he should have. Yeah. But he still made the positive moves to do it.
And that's it. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's whatever resonates for that person. So for a number of people, if alcohol consumption is a big part of their life, that's a big area that they can start with. I see this a lot, often in clinic. People are quite shy about how much alcohol they consume. So I'll make people fill in a food diary, and they will always underestimate that like the 2 bottles of wine is like a glass or a couple of glasses, and and through a lot of questioning, we come to the conclusion that there's 2 bottles of wine a week. That's a good place to start, like you say, and that's a relatively simple thing to do. And there's loads of products on the market now. It used to be, I think, difficult for people out socially to say that they didn't drink or they didn't want to drink. It was far more socially, I don't like saying socially acceptable because it makes it sound like it's wrong, but it's easier, I think, to do it.
100%. And it's not just easier, it's that people are so much more health conscious now. Like we saw, I was going past a club that used to be called The Sanctuary the other day. It's now not The Sanctuary, it's changed. But there was like a running club going past it. I never used to see that. I never used to see that. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned red wine there. The terrifying thing about red wine, I learned the other day, UFC fighters, the day before they fight, there's like, they will drink a bottle or 2 of red wine to dehydrate themselves. Yeah. See, when you hear that, how tapped is that? Like, see, if you need to lose a couple of kilos, they'll literally just get absolutely smashed.
Well, bodybuilders are not healthy. I would not take health advice from a bodybuilder.
But it also goes to show the level of dehydration that alcohol causes. Like a bottle of red wine, these guys are legitimately losing weight to fight in order to do their weigh-ins by drinking red wine. Yeah. It's specifically wine. I don't know if it's more dehydrating. It must
possibly, but can you imagine the headache?
Oh, red wine, Christ. Yeah, white wine's a little bit better.
No, but the red wine hangover is something else.
No, it's the worst. It's is it phosphate?
Something like that. Yeah, it's just sulfates.
Sulfates. Yes. That's it. Yeah, it's terrible.
But again, that's an example of a short-term intervention to get a short-term gain that is possibly stacking up longer-term problems. Bodybuilders as a whole, what they do to get into shape to compete, when they come out the other side, they pile all the weight back on again because you cannot maintain that lifestyle. It's just impossible.
A lot of rugby players do it. They'll come out of the rugby pitch and within like 2 years they'll because they're exercising so much. They're really fit
and they're used to that high protein, high food consumption, and possibly that hasn't adapted for the shift down in movement.
Like taking it down a gear. Is there a difference between the genes when it comes to nutrients in different ethnicities? So like what would be, like, let's say you've got someone from like Asia. I know that a lot more of them are lactose intolerant, or most of them. It's actually quite common in Asia in general, like most of them are lactose, which is weird. But is there any others that are quite interesting?
Yeah, there's I can't remember the name of the gene, but there's one with alcohol actually.
Right.
And it's known anecdotally as an Asian flush. So if they consume any amount of alcohol, they'll flush really quickly because the blood's running to the surface of the skin, and they just don't feel good on alcohol. So a lot of that society don't tend to drink alcohol because genetically they just can't metabolize it. Yeah. The lactose one is one, another one as well. So some of us are lactose, intolerant, and some of us are not. And genetically, that's from our history, it's from our lineage, so that in times of food scarcity, we could still consume dairy from the cows and the goats and whatnot. So some of us have maintained the ability to break lactose down and other people haven't.
How come we are so, I don't want to say in tune, because it's by its nature and definition it is poison, but we talk about these cultures that they get the flushes with alcohol and they can't really drink because it is poison, and they might not have done it in their history. Why are we okay with it?
I don't know.
In the UK.
The $1 million. Are we okay with it? Or are we just
putting up
desensitized to the effects of it? I don't know. That's the $1 million question, isn't it? And you can look at two people's genetics that are eating the same diet, but they will express completely differently. So it depends on, you inherit your genetic code from your biological parents. So you get one set of instructions from your mother and one set from your father. And that then creates a new set of instructions. So if you then go on to have children, you're passing that mix of genetics then onto your children. So it's like a big flow chart.
Yeah.
Right? So I guess over thousands of years, we've maybe migrated across continents, so we've started to mix genes that maybe weren't mixed before. So you start to get different combinations of genetics, and that's the fascinating thing for me. Is it's just not clear cut and it's not black and white. It's just so fascinating how two people can express completely. You see it in families. So you might have there's 4 siblings, for example. 3 of them are absolutely fine on gluten or dairy, and one of them is celiac and lactose intolerant, and you're like, well, how? It's just to do with the genetic combination.
Yeah, my brother's celiac. Yeah, whereas Annabelle and I are relatively fine. My sister and I are relatively fine, but yeah, he's celiac, so he needs to be really careful with what he eats.
So I did to do the training, I did the genetic test on myself. So one of them is actually, it will tell you that there's 2 genes for celiac disease.
Right.
So my mum and my brother are both celiac quite severely. And I've got a bit of a love bread, but it doesn't love me type situation. But I've never had any of the extreme symptoms. So when I got the genetic report back, it was no surprise that I actually carry one of the celiac genes. So that was enough information for me to say, actually, I need to rein it in I need to just not eat gluten at all. And I think that's powerful for people. I don't know if you're like this. If you see the data and you see the information, it helps you make the change a lot easier because you now understand why you're doing it.
Was factual.
Yes.
I think that's the crux of a lot of conversations that I have, especially on the podcast or out with, is people sometimes, due to their biases, whether it's in the family or social groups or what they've seen in social media, ignore the data. And like a lot of the time, if you actually look, you'll find what you are looking for.
Clues in the looking.
Exactly. That's exactly it. But sometimes people don't want to do that. They're like, I know that I am addicted to sugar. I kind of just want to ignore it because if I ignore it, it's not there. Yeah. And then the problem continues. There was a study that was done on the way that people look. I can't remember. I'm going to butcher this study, but it was done on the way that people look after their dogs versus the way that they look after themselves.
Interesting.
And people were a lot more likely to take the dog to a vet if they found a lump in the dog, than they were to take themselves to the doctor if they found a lump in themselves.
That doesn't surprise me.
Not at all. But it's because people are they're more inclined to be slightly avoidant to issues, because they want that balance. They want ease.
Yeah. And I would argue that it's not ease, because I think there's always another factor. There's an emotional factor going on, particularly, with emotional eating. So if someone's addicted to sugar, it's usually driven by emotional, and there's something underlying that they don't want to face or can't face, it's too painful to face, or they're trying to numb and bury it. And it's interesting when I work with clients and we start to remove sugar, I always pre-warn them that when you remove the sugar, all your stuff's going to come up.
Yeah.
So all that anger, rage, resentment, unhappiness that you're burying is going to come to the surface. So I help them find, we put tools and processes in place to help them navigate that, because a lot of us, we've never been shown how to sit with our own emotional stuff. We just want to numb and check out. And we're seeing that play out in society, and it's really not working for us at all. Like, we're heading towards an untimely end if we keep doing this.
Yeah. People do it in different ways. I suppose, like, I know people that for sure bury their issues in the gym.
Well, you could argue, is that healthier then?
Well, I suppose it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I suppose it's the extreme in which you take it to.
Anything can become addictive.
That's exactly it. It's like it's the life is about balance, and it's, you know, you're allowed to eat a cake, but you can't eat a cake every day. You maybe eat a cake on your birthday, and you know, but then you'll enjoy it more. I don't know. I think that kind of trauma leads people to do different things. It leads some people to be extremely successful.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier about purpose. That's a huge thing. If you don't have a sense of purpose and you only are deriving your sense of some sense of fun or joy from the food that you eat, without any purpose behind that, you're always going to that food to get that same feeling.
And then, the feeling will get further and further.
Yeah, you're chasing a carrot on a stick. You know, you just never reach it. Whereas if you work on cultivating that purpose and contentment internally, you can have the cake whenever you want, but that's not your sole source of joy. It might be because you've made it yourself or you've sourced the ingredients. There's a lot of joy in that, but you're not reliant on that thing. And that's about people looking outside of themselves rather than finding something inside themselves and then, you know, life outside changing as a result. And I think that's what we're seeing with people who are living with chronic health conditions. There's a lot of that.
Yeah, I think it's more difficult to find purpose nowadays as well because of what society has done in terms of just like stripping you of everything. I mean, you essentially pay like 50% tax.
Yes.
You then get a property, you're paying council tax, you're paying for your TV license, you're paying for this, you're paying for that. Then you die, and then you have to pay 50% inheritance tax. Then you pay this tax. Like, people legitimately don't have the means now to pursue what they really want to do because of what society is doing. So they're stuck in something that they can't, it's hard to get out of. And then it's hard to find their purpose. So instead they just eat.
Yeah.
You know, they're stuck in a loop. They can't really break that loop, because if they break that loop, well, who's going to pay the rent? Like, so it's hard. It's a very big decision to get out of it.
Yeah.
And as a result, they lose their purpose on the way.
I would argue that it's imperative that we do. And I don't think that purpose is something that you find. I think it's something that's inside you. This is my experience and that of others that I've listened to and talked to. Once you turn down the noise, so all that other external nonsense that's, you know, coming at you, work on shutting that out, turning it down, and going inwards. You know, like, to take this in another conversation, another direction, is to meditate is a huge part of nervous system regulation. So most people are mechanically, monotonously moving through life with a nervous system that's jacked up, and they're in fight or flight. And that's why we're seeing chronic health outcomes, because at the root of it is a nervous system, either through environmental trauma or experience that individual has gone through. It's stuck in their body, and we're not shown, you know, through that conventional system that you're saying, we're not taught how to regulate, how to self-regulate, how to manage stress. You need a certain amount of stress, but how much is too much stress? Every individual is different. How we tolerate and modulate stress is different. That's an inside job. And it takes accountability and responsibility to recognise that it starts with us as individuals, to check out and tune out all that other stuff and slow your world down, slow your eating down, slow everything down, and really tap into your body and listen to what your body's saying. So to bring this back to Ozempic, for me, that's the equivalent of jumping in your car and driving along the M8 and it's rattling. You don't know why it's rattling, so you just turn the radio up. So you just can't hear it. It's still rattling.
Yeah.
So that it's the same thing. It's just another layer of just turning down the noise, but not really addressing the root problem. So to answer the question about how would we do this holistically, for me, nervous system regulation, so meditation, breath work, tuning into your body, like really listening to what your body's saying. It's convenient for people to not listen, but I think that strategy is reaching an end.
Oh, it's dying.
We just can't do it.
I think we need to be more kind of introspective as to what's actually going on in our own brains. Because when you look at society nowadays, as you said, there's this pent up like anxiety, fight or
rage.
flight.
People are angry.
Yeah. You try and talk to someone, they're like, "Oh, fuck off." It's that kind of thing. What does stress do to your genetics when it comes to diet?
Stress is one of the biggest and worst components. So we talk about cascades when we look at genetic profiling. So when you get your genetic report, it looks like a flowchart. So it's a cascade. You with chronic stress. So there's two types of stress. So there's acute stress where you're in maybe an emergency situation. Your body releases adrenaline. You navigate that situation and then the adrenaline drops away and then you come back to your set point. Chronic stress is not that. It's where you get stuck in fight or flight and you're just every day you're stuck in this sympathetic dominance where you're just constantly in fight or flight. That changes everything. It changes your brain chemistry. It changes your appetite. It makes you crave more carbohydrates, more carb-rich food, refined food, because your body's just wanting quick energy. You can't make conscious decisions because your fear part of your brain's hijacked. So for me, a lot of the clients that come to me are stuck in that sympathetic dominance. So I want to help them do everything that we've just said, so slow everything down. We can't really make changes in a point where they're stuck in fight or flight because they'll just everything that they try to implement, they'll undo it because there's not enough safety in the body. The body needs safety. So stress can switch on inflammation, neuroinflammation, so inflammation in the brain, so neurodegenerative conditions become more prevalent, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's.
So stress can lead to Alzheimer's?
There's a connection through the cascade, So if you're changing your brain chemistry through inflammatory cascades, Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's terrifying.
Isn't it?
That's really scary. I didn't think of that.
And we can't say this absolute because there are no absolutes, but we can definitely mitigate a lot of that. So something like 95% of cancers are diet and lifestyle driven. There will be a genetic component in some rare cancers, but most cancers and diseases are lifestyle driven. So if you're moving through life with no awareness, no appreciation of what you're eating and what you're doing is impacting your health, you're never motivated to change it until you wait. For most people, there's two camps of people. So there are those who are confronted with a life-altering diagnosis, for example. That's usually a line in the sand moment where they recognise that maybe their lifestyle and diet habits are not optimal and they make dietary changes. So I'll see clients at that point. And then there are other camps of people, probably like you and I, who want to optimise. So we're relatively healthy, but we want to be better. So say you are a cyclist or a long distance runner and you want to improve your time, so you want to optimize what you're already doing, so you can look at your genetic blueprint and say, well, actually I could tweak some stuff here and change my diet or whatever. And
what do you get most of in terms of the two different camps? Is it optimization or
no, I think that's actually the rarer side of things. Mostly is people who are confronted with a chronic illness. Because I don't think it's a good thing, but fear is a motivator.
It's odd how people allow themselves to get to that stage in terms of like psychologically speaking. I wonder what's going on that allows them to almost ignore an issue until it's too big.
Cognitive dissonance.
To sort
yeah.
But like, do you know what I mean? Like, I think that if I had like if I was starting to put on weight, I think I would recognize that quite quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be like, this isn't healthy. And then I'd make the changes.
You're quite in tune with your body. So you would probably notice that. Or you would feel the effects of your energy tanking, your sleep suffering. I think a lot of people they're so in their head that they're just trying to survive, literally survive and get through their day, that they're very disconnected from their body. So it's almost like they just cart their body around. They might be quite out of tune with how they feel. And like I said earlier, they've maybe never experienced how good they could actually feel. So there's no incentive to make the changes necessary to feel that way, because they've just never felt it.
Have you ever studied, this is a total left field, but I just had a thought when you were mentioning Alzheimer's there. Have you ever studied or kind of looked into creatine?
Yes.
Is it the miracle in which people are giving it credit for?
I wouldn't be able to answer because I can't remember there are studies that are showing in terms of like mental performance, and I did read one, and I'll butcher this, but if you say you've had a terrible night's sleep for whatever reason, and you take a certain amount of creatine, it can improve your mental function.
Yes, you'll be performing at the same level as you would if you had slept.
Yeah.
So because I looked into the again, I'll maybe look up the stats now because I will butcher that. We don't have an Annabelle here to look up. But there was connections between Ozempic. There was connections between creatine benefits and Alzheimer's.
Right. Okay.
So enhances exercise performance, increases muscle mass and strength.
Yeah.
So as you get older, obviously you lose that muscle mass. If you're taking creatine, it will alleviate that kind of issue. There's obviously the cognitive benefits. So research suggests that creatine may improve cognitive function like memory, attention, and reasoning skill. It may also help reduce mental fatigue. Brain health. Some studies indicate that creatine plays a role in protecting against certain neurological diseases. For example, the one we were just talking about, bone health, blood sugar regulation. Like the more that is. And again, this is fact-based. So for me, I was like, creatine, let's look into that. But it seems to be this kind of, I don't want to say miracle, but a very beneficial thing for your body to take.
And a relatively easy intervention. So the source of quality one, I think that's always what I would caution anyone that's... so I always take a food-first approach, but if there's something that you can't easily achieve through your diet and you want to supplement, make sure you can buy the best quality that you can afford. Yeah,
the actual stuff.
Yes, not some fake cut version that you don't know what you're buying.
Yeah. Oh, because I remember you saying last time when you buy vitamin D, it's like 1/4 of the vitamin D.
Yeah.
It's like because it's so tiny in comparison to what you actually need in your body.
Yeah.
But they're getting away with doing it. Was it for World War II that you said?
Yeah, well, vitamin D is an interesting one. So I'd looked up the stats just because vitamin D plays a role in metabolism.
Yes.
So it's stored in the adipose tissue, so it's stored in the fat tissue. So individuals that are living with obesity, they store more vitamin D in their fat cells. So you would think, well, that must be a good thing, right? But what it's like is having a bank account full of money that you can't access. So it's locked away in the fat cells, so they can't access it. So it might look on their blood work that they're at adequate levels, but it doesn't mean that the hormone, the vitamin D hormone, is getting to where it needs to go. So we can actually see that in genetic testing as well. We can see how well does someone transport. So I'm a poor transporter of vitamin D. So that means I have to supplement over and above.
Right.
So my blood levels look fine, but the cells are not getting the signal. So only something like 25% of the Scottish population are actually, they're deficient. So 90, that would leave 95%, I think that's right, are insufficient. So they're not even at optimal, they're insufficient. So most of the population are under the level that we need to be like sufficiently absorbing vitamin D. That's terrifying for me anyway. Because you need vitamin D for nearly every process in the body, particularly your brain, your mood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that why you feel so much happier in the sun? Is it just because we don't get much sun?
Yeah.
I saw a video of Ronaldo the other day, and he was sitting in the sun, and he said he was talking about his health, and he was saying, listen, I know that if I get 20 minutes of sun a day, I feel much better, and I can go around my training routine and do all that kind of stuff. I think we have a fear of the sun because of aging, but I also think that as long as you're not taking the piss, you should be okay.
Yeah, you can sit in this the sort of leading up to midday sun. You should be able to, maybe late morning actually would be a better time. Sit in the sun for around, most people can sit for about 15 to 20 minutes before they burn. Obviously, that's down to the individual, and they will know if they've got fairer skin, they burn quicker. But you want to be able to sit in the sun so you absorb vitamin D. How many people are sedentary? They don't go out. They don't exercise outside. So already the odds are stacked against them because they're deficient in a key hormone, a key nutrient that regulates nearly every process in the body. And that feels like a simple intervention. You could supplement. You could take a supplement, get your blood levels checked. It's inexpensive, and just check where you are.
So when someone comes to you and wants this DNA test, it's saliva, right? So
it's a mouth swab test. Yeah.
So you take a swab and then you send that off to a lab.
Yeah.
And then you get the stats back. And what does that look like? Is it like a huge sheet
Yeah. So you can only get it through a practitioner. So you as a consumer couldn't buy it because for that reason you would get the test results and you'd be like, what the hell does this mean? Series of coloured dots and flowcharts. So it would be done through a practitioner who's been trained to interpret it. And there's 11 different reports. So you do the mouth swab once, and then you would choose which reports you want. So some people have thyroid issues, so they would want to look at the thyroid report. There's actually one for Alzheimer's called ApoE. Not everyone wants that because not everyone wants to know if they carry the Alzheimer's gene. So you can do that one. There's a metabolics one that looks at metabolic function, nervous system. A lot of people look at that if there's a history of anxiety, depression, bipolar, ADHD, OCD is another one. And we can see the serotonin pathways, we can see the dopamine pathways.
So if somebody had ADHD, you'd be able to see that they've been dopamine spiking or dopamine hitting?
Well, it's not showing real time. So
because the actual real time would show that
no, it's not.
Level,
so it's
right?
showing your genetic susceptibility. So it's showing you your set point. So someone might not regulate their dopamine particularly well. So their sensitivity, their VDR receptor isn't getting the signal. So they might be consuming enough amino acids, they're making enough dopamine, but the cells are just not getting the signal. So we can, using nutrition, we can dial that sensitivity up, or we can, maybe there's too much, we dial it down, or they clear it from their system too quickly. So that can look like low dopamine. The reason it looks like low dopamine is they're removing it it's getting whipped away too quickly.
Okay.
So it's figuring out where in that pathway the person is. And then if you take this to the really specialist end, there are psychologists, psychotherapists using this. So you can actually, it's out with my remit, but if they're a prescriber, they can prescribe medication that might be just a better dosage rather than the sort of blanket dosage.
Yes.
And they can tailor it with nutrition and medication. And that's where you're at the ultra high, sort of high precision end of health, which is where we're at. It's leading edge.
Do you think that that's an issue? Like you said something quite interesting there. There's the blanket dosage of drugs that people take. Does that cause issues in society?
Yeah, it does, because the dosages are worked out on a population basis.
Right.
And then just replicated out. But, they're not studied on you, they're not studied on me. We're individuals, so there will always be individuals who have adverse effects because the parameters are so wide.
Wow.
And we see this in like blood work, for example, where there's like a functional... It's not functional. There'll be a lab parameter that will say, so ferritin, for example. So if someone has low energy, the doctor sort of assumes that there's maybe anemia. So you look at ferritin levels. That person can look like they're sufficient. But where are they? Are they at the lower end of sufficient? Because you can still feel the effects, even though you fall into that bracket. You've got adequate ferritin. It could be low. So in functional medicine, our parameters are wider.
Right.
So we're not trapping as many, how do you explain? We can see the root causes a lot easier. If that makes sense. So we're looking at, someone can be at lower end of normal and still feeling the ill effects of that low nutrient.
But would you say that food is always the way to go, like always go nutrition first in terms of like, instead of supplementing, eat the food that has it?
Again, it's so bio-individual. It depends on the person. It also depends on the circumstance. So say in a mental health situation, that person, maybe they don't want to stand and cook, or they are not able to get out and shop for good things. So maybe the drugs come first. That's the intervention to create a bit of stability, to allow them a bit of a more stable sort of body and physiology to then make changes.
Yes.
So you stabilise the body first.
And then you change the neuropathways in terms of doing the...
But if that's not an issue for someone, you do it the other way around. It really depends on the individual and what they need. And that's exciting to me because you can really tailor and individualise it for each person, which our healthcare system is not that. It's a blanket approach and it treats everybody the same way.
It's funny the way that habits form like that, and it's like it's interesting the way that those drugs work on people. It's not really about the effects of them feeling slightly better, less anxiety, less depression. It's more them starting to form new neural pathways. What were the drugs called again? They're serotonin reuptakers.
SSRIs.
SSRIs, yeah. So I read somewhere that it's as if you're having the same conversation that you normally would, but you just feel better about it.
Yeah, and a lot of people, it sort of flatlines
them,
so they don't get the highs and lows. Now, I don't know about you, but as a human, I want to feel the highs and lows.
What means you're human?
Well, yeah, and I wonder if does this come back to the fact that we don't know how to handle though. And I'm not saying that medication has a place and people should absolutely go down that route and that's right for them. But what would it look like if we had the tools and the awareness to ride those highs and lows? And is it driven by your lifestyle and your diet? Are you eating too much sugar, which is driving something?
Well, I think the issue is that the lows are getting much more low. So like the lows, instead of being like, I went hunting and I didn't catch the deer, it's now like, well, I had a massive dose of cocaine and I went out and then I like had a bottle of wine and then all of a sudden you've got this low that's way past anything we should be experiencing. Now that's an extreme.
That is an extreme,
right? So like, but you can understand where I'm coming from. Like, let's say I go out for a meal with the boys. I have a massive pizza.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, there's nothing in that. It's going to make me crash. It's going to be instant gratification, and I'm going to feel shit after it. But then after that, I start drinking. I then drink until 3 a.m. I'm really hungover. I'm sleep deprived. I've eaten shit that's not natural. It's synthesized. Then in the morning, I think, I can't be arsed making breakfast. I'll just go out and get something or get a takeaway. Then it's that cycle that the low becomes much more low than it should have been, or it would have been.
Your set point's lower than where you started out. Yeah.
And is that, I wonder if that's what society is really dealing with. It's that, like, it's not that we can't deal with slight lows. It's that the low is going so much that people that aren't balanced enough to, or don't have the... Not courage. I don't want to say courage,
but it's resiliency.
The resilience to say, actually, I don't want that bottle of wine, or like I don't want that pizza. I want this. The discipline. They can't handle the. Yeah,
and if you're moving through life mechanically and automatically because you're disconnected from your body, the ability to buy yourself time to say, no, the last time I drank that whole bottle of red wine, I really didn't feel good. Yeah. So that risk reward thing. When you buy yourself a bit of time, which is what happens when you meditate, you slow everything down and you create a bigger gap where you tune into yourself. It's easier to say no because you remember from the last time and that didn't feel good. But if you're just surviving and you're sort of crashing from one catastrophe into the next, it would make sense that that route would be the route that you would be drawn to.
So how do you think you bridge that gap? If you have someone that has been doing that dopamine hitting, I suppose you could say, because they do feel shit, so then all of a sudden they get a takeaway and they feel better for an instant, and then it's doof, and then it's takeaway again, and then how would you begin to bridge that gap?
They have to want to. That's the beginning. So in order to want to, I think they need some level of self-awareness, that a bit of pattern recognition, that they recognise that every time they do this, it doesn't feel good, and it gets worse every time they do it too. So yeah, but massive self-awareness.
So it's knowing that you want to make the change, like, because no one's going to make the change for you, right? You need
absolutely
to
not.
make it.
No.
So do you think the first step is, it's almost like, it's like therapy. The first step is acceptance almost, that there's maybe an issue and you don't feel great. And in order
talking to your peers, talking to friends, professionals as well, gather information. I think that can be a trap too. I think people can get stuck in information gathering, and if you've got that perfectionistic tendency, you will want to do it whatever you deem as perfect, so maybe you just never start.
Yeah, well, it's getting it done is get it better than getting it right.
Exactly.
A lot of photographers I know have the same issue.
Yeah,
it's like
just start. And particularly with what I do, there's lots of on-ramps to like work in nutritional therapy. So it might be that we start with their sleep. So if they know that sleep's an issue for them, how do we work on that? Do we, put something like magnesium into their protocol? So magnesium really helps relax your body. It helps support sleep. And then gradually start pulling their bedtime routine back. So it's just gradual changes so that we get maybe just that 10% gain. And that 10% might be enough that they get enough momentum that they're like, oh, I feel good doing this.
Yes.
Drinking water. So I'll start there with people. You'd be horrified how little fluid people drink and how much caffeine and tea they drink, which is dehydrating them. Just start with a litre a day and then build that up. It clears your foggy thinking. It helps you sleep better. It can help with weight stability.
It helps with skin health.
Everything.
Yeah.
It's such a quick win. And all it takes is to buy a bottle that you like, fill it up a couple of times a day, stick it in your eye line and just drink it. And that can be enough to just get the momentum going, start building confidence that, oh yeah, I do feel good. What else could I do? Right, I currently don't eat breakfast. What could I start to add in? So I try and get people to add in before they take away. Because if you think about it, if you start taking their crutch away, whatever that is, there's no stability there. So we add in and optimize, and then invariably, they won't gravitate towards the harmful things like the sugar and the alcohol, because they no longer need it. They're satiated, they're nourished, their brain's firing, and they can think clearer. Those are all things that we want.
I take zinc and magnesium now.
Yeah.
The tablets at night, it helps so much.
It does, it really does.
It literally, again, it was that kind of like, all the boys kind of like, you don't need it, it's fine, it's like, it's never going to work. But it really does work. Yeah. It totally, like, it puts you to sleep and it sends you into deep sleep, like you're not waking up. I found that really helped.
Do you drink caffeine?
I try and limit it to after like 12. I won't drink any.
So there's a big movement with like fungi, mushrooms, so things like cordyceps, so lion's mane, and then also using adaptogens like ashwagandha. So there's a really nice brand, London Nootropics, so they do sachets of coffee, and the adaptogens help with, there's one called Mojo, and it's like it opens up your neural pathways. I don't exactly know what that's doing, but it just helps you think clearer, and because it's got the cordyceps in it, it helps balance out the caffeine spike, and then you don't get the crash. So a lot of people are switching from just their pure coffee over to something that's got mushrooms in it or adaptogens.
Yeah. Well, what about lion's mane? Is lion's mane as good as everyone's making it to be?
Again, it comes back to quality. So if you make sure you're sourcing it from a good provider. And then if you like coffee, you can tag team it, put your mushrooms in your coffee. Yeah.
And what does lion's mane actually have?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me. I can't remember what it does.
Because it has everything in it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I can look it up really quick.
I feel like it's because it's in the coffee, it must be something to do with brain function.
Yeah, why?
A lot of immunity, I would think, as well.
What's the question? What does lion's mane does?
What does it
or
do?
what does lion's mane mushrooms do?
Be careful when you're Googling.
All right, let's have a look. Lion's mane mushroom is known for its potential cognitive and neurological benefits, including brain health, nerve regeneration, and mood enhancement.
Yeah.
It's almost like magic mushrooms.
Yeah.
It also exists antioxidants, anti-inflammatories, a bunch of other cool stuff. But it's funny how it says potential benefits. I wonder if it's...
Well, that'll be probably because it's not studied, so they have to say potential.
Yeah.
It may cause... But, you know, it's a study of one. You try it, and you if you get the benefit from it, then it's something that works for you.
Yeah. I'm not going to read all this out because it's the amount of stuff that's in it that is good for you. Like some of these words I can't even pronounce, but it does look really good. It's something, my brother's the same as me in terms of he's quite, I suppose I'm a bit more flamboyant than my brother, but he studied law, so he's very much like facts and reads and and he was suggesting to go on lion's mane as well, just because of how good it is for you.
Yeah, so we can see that in the caffeine and genetic testing. So I love the smell of coffee, but I can't drink it. It just, you know, even one cup, I wouldn't sleep. So when I got my genetic test results back, it shows there's two genes. So one is how well you metabolize it. Another one is how well you clear it out of your system. Both genes are red for me. I don't metabolize it and I don't clear it, so it hangs around even longer. So even things, because that sensitivity is so high, things like dark chocolate, if I eat a lot of dark chocolate, which has got natural caffeine in it, that caffeine starts to build up.
That's interesting, because I've got friends that can take a shot of caffeine, an espresso shot for dessert after dinner.
Yes.
And I'm like, are you insane?
I live with someone who does that. Yeah.
Like, you actually insane. Like, I'd be up for
weeks.
Yeah, like, I can't. I'd blow my head off.
It gives me like almost like anxiety. It's
jitters.
Like proper jitters. And initially, because it can actually help with the dopamine pathways. There's a lot of research to show that it opens up the dopamine pathways. So you do get that initial really good feeling. But for me, the result, the long-term result, just outweighs the initial benefit.
I don't understand people that are like, literally one of my best friends, you'll get an espresso shot for dinner and I'm like, oh my God. But then his dad does that. So I reckon it's a
genetically very good at clearing caffeine. Yeah,
exactly. Whereas if I did that, I just wouldn't. I could.
You'd be lying awake.
Yeah, I'd be staring at the wall. Is there any effects of what caffeine does to your diet? Like, what are the effects of caffeine?
I think I can never remember the studies off the top of my head, but there's a lot of evidence to show that it can help with metabolism regulation. But again, it's going to come back to how well that person can tolerate it. Most people know if they can or they can't. Green tea is another one. So green tea comes out because it's got natural caffeine in it, and the compound that's in green tea is really beneficial. So you'll see on the genetic report there's always green tea because it can help sort of speed up some of the genes if they're quite sluggish. But frustratingly, I'm one of the small percentage of people I can't tolerate green tea.
Why does it speed up the genes?
It's the compound in it that acts on the gene.
Right. So almost like, I don't want to say antagonizes, but
it upregulates it. So what you'll see on the genetic reports is it's color coded. So mostly green means that there's good function, amber means that it's semi sort of slow, red means it's very downregulated.
Okay.
So if someone's got a particular gene that's downregulated that we want to upregulate, we can use natural compounds like green tea. So we can get them to add green tea into their sort of routine, and that will help stabilize what is a sluggish gene for them.
Wow.
But I'm the opposite. So those genes in me are quite fast. So I don't want to speed them up anymore, which is why when I drink green tea, it makes me feel sick and anxious. But then you see a lot of supplements have got green tea in them because they're so widely known to be beneficial. And it also contains L-theanine. So if people have got issues with sleep, L-theanine is really good to help kind of calm them down, ready for sleep.
What does it do? Does it just kind of...
it's an amino acid, so it just helps relax the body, it relaxes the mind, and calm down that overthinky stuff. So you see a lot of people that are maybe they've been addicted to caffeine and they break that addiction with green tea. So they kind of swap their caffeinated coffee for green tea.
I've got a friend. Did you meet Drew when? No, it was Annabelle you met, wasn't
yes,
it?
Yeah.
He's in America now, but my old videographer, he did that. He stopped drinking coffee and he started drinking green tea.
Yeah.
And he was like religious about his green tea. But I think it comes down to other stuff that he was dealing with. But he said it made him feel so much better.
Well,
it was more of a mellow.
Yeah, you don't get this spikes and troughs that caffeine can give you. And then matcha tea, green tea is huge, and there's a whole ceremony around that. But that's just like green tea on steroids.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
But see if you get a really good matcha tea with coconut milk and have it hot, it's almost like you suppose you can't drink.
No, it make me feel sick.
It's actually so good. Like I was looking at my sister drinking this green gunk and that's rank, and she went, no, try it, and it's actually really good. And it's not when I drink a coffee, it's like this immediate I feel great, and then 20 minutes later I'm like, oh
yeah, you'll get the dopamine release from the coffee.
And then I have another one, and then it's so matcha isn't like that. You have it and for 2 hours you're fine. And then it is kind of weird that society are so anti-drug, and then caffeine is the one drug that we are all
we're all
so
socially, and alcohol as well, it's socially acceptable to just numb yourself with this poison.
Just get smashed and everyone's like, he's just drunk, it's fine.
Yeah, and I think we said this the last time, it's sort of normalised. So movies that you watch, or if you watch TV shows, they've had a hard day, they come home, they crack open a bottle of wine. Like, why are we normalising? Can we normalise green tea and meditation? It's just not as sexy.
What are your thoughts? I was going to ask you this. I spoke to a gentleman on the podcast, I'm going to say like a couple months ago, called Corey Richards. And he is like a world-renowned photographer, but he also did stuff like he went up Everest with no oxygen. He got caught in an avalanche and managed to survive. He was on the cover of Nat Geo. Like, the guy is, for me especially, he was like when I was coming into photography, I'd look at him.
Like an icon.
He was an icon to me. Like, he was the guy. And I was really lucky to kind of speak to him on the podcast. He also had his photo in the back of a Vacheron watch. Oh. So your husband might, you'll know about that. So yeah, super cool guy. But he was talking about all his experiences, and then started talking about the effects and the legalization of psilocybin in mushrooms, different hallucinogenics, MDMA therapy. He was quite a big advocate of that because he himself is bipolar. Yeah. And he writes about it in his books a lot. But what are your thoughts on the natural methods behind, like, for example, magic mushrooms or MDMA therapy, or like all these kind of things when it links into trauma? Because obviously, if someone's overeating a lot, quite a lot of the time they're covering something up that they have trauma. What are your opinions?
Yeah, I'm fully open to it, and I think what's important is that it's done in the container of safety.
Yes,
and it's like anything where there's a big explosion of interest. You're going to end up with people doing ayahuasca on their own in a forest somewhere and having a complete mental breakdown because they're not held in the community that is needed and required to hold somebody through that. They're just cracked wide open and left with this stuff, so it's about safety, I think. And I don't mean safety in terms of the drug. I mean the environment,
psychological safety.
Psychological safety is so important. And that comes back to Ozempic too. If you're in the container of the NHS and you're in a care package where all areas of your life, what you eat, your environment, all of that are being tended to, versus someone who's buying it online and they've just ticked the right boxes so they can buy it, are they safe? Beyond the safety of the drug, are they in a safe environment cognitively to manage what the side effects might be? It's about awareness. But yeah, I'm very intrigued to that side of things. But again, it gets classed as alternative, and
but it's natural. Yeah. Like I think, and again, you get labelled as this kind of. At least I definitely have recently. Actually, I suppose just because more people are viewing the podcast, as kind of like a
hippie.
Yeah, like a hippie. But My thing is like the studies that go behind it, but also how ancient some of these methods are.
Yeah.
And the facts behind it are that hundreds of thousands of years, tens of thousands of years ago, they were using things like this. And they were doing it probably deliberately. Like they were probably, I'm not saying that everything's good for you. I also think that if you are prone to more psychological issues, you probably shouldn't mess with that.
No, you shouldn't.
Because it can bring stuff on.
Yeah.
Absolutely 100%. And if it's not safe, I'm the same as you.
Yeah.
Don't take a drug that you don't know what it is, but if you have a soldier that's been in, if you've got a soldier that's coming back from Ukraine, there's been a leg blown off and they are struggling with their mental health, and the only way that they can talk about it is by having a slight dose of MDMA.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you do that?
Is it to do with, like you said, follow the money?
Probably.
You can't patent nature.
Mm.
And so psilocybin's an interesting one because that's mushrooms that are grown in nature, and then the pharmaceutical industry got hold of this, and now you can only get it through pharmaceuticals. Well, legally.
Yeah, legally speaking.
It's interesting.
It's I just find it really funny. Like, I think that because MDMA therapy is definitely one I would support, especially when it comes to veterans, or like see some of the stuff that police officers go through in America, like high stress situations. And as long as you don't take the piss with it, I think that's probably a good thing. Psilocybin's a interesting one because it literally reforms the neural pathways. So and again, it's like I'm not fully supporting it because I think that it could probably bring on issues if you're prone to it. So you need to be really careful. But if you are depressed and you're taking a drug that's going to reform your pathways and give you a new love for life, I don't know why you wouldn't you wouldn't go for that.
Maybe because your environment, the people you're around, it's never been introduced to you, as in the concept of it.
Yeah.
You're not open to it because you've not...
Or you think it's hippie.
Yeah, or your biased immediately discounts it. Yeah. So I had done some writing for the supplement company that I write for, and we were talking about saffron, which is a spice, which is used in Indian curries. It's been used for generations. That is effective on serotonin pathways as SSRIs. Now, I don't think people know that.
Wow.
Yeah, there's studies to show it's as effective as, if not better, in effect than SSRIs. And it's an expensive herb, but it's something, a spice, sorry. It's something that you could consciously start to add into your food. It just feels like an easy intervention. You don't have to do it all at once. I think, to go back to the perfectionistic thing, the people want to do it right and they want to do it all at once. And that's a sure way to set yourself up for failure. So you just you try to do too much too soon.
Wait until the government make it illegal. They try to brand it as something else.
Something else. Yeah, try and make money out of it.
That's so interesting though. So it is the studies are showing that it's as effective as an SSRI in terms of stability, or Wow. So you'll see in a lot of formulations now that are because we can't use the word stress. Stress is another word that we can't talk about because stress is seen as a health claim. So we have to talk about inner resilience, inner well-being. So you see a lot of products now that have saffron in them, and they'll maybe have like ashwagandha. They'll have a lot of magnesium, lemon balm, L-theanine, so things that just help calm the nervous system down. So that might be an on-ramp place for someone where they recognise, actually, I'm really overly stressed. What could I start to put into my protocol that might help mitigate some of that? So you're stabilising the body. But yeah, it's just finding what's right for that individual. I find that fascinating regarding the saffron. Is there any other studies you've been writing about that you think are particularly interesting?
None that I can remember off the top of my head. We write so many. They've got such a broad range of supplements. So I jump from omega-3s to magnesium to zinc to, there's a whole host. but they're all on their website. So if you're ever curious, you just can type in something and you'll pick up the articles.
Well, what is the website?
It's Revive Active, so it's just reviveactive.com.
Right.
So they're Ireland's #1 supplement company, and they have a presence now in the UK.
Wow.
So we are helping to educate consumers about just exactly what minus the mushroom chat, because that wouldn't get through compliance.
Yeah.
Just educating people about what is health, what is wellness, and it is bio-individual to that person. So,
yeah. And like, see, when it comes to supplements, do you think that there's I'm always I'm nervous around supplements because I feel like potentially some of them can be sold as something they're not, or they have very minimal of what they actually sell. You know, that there's levels to them that aren't right, or they're filling it with stuff that's not that great, and just tiny bit of what is good. And how do you know that the supplements that you're working with are?
So you want to buy from a reputable brand first and foremost. So a brand that has a compliance team, so they're very on it with what they can and can't say. Everything's been tested, so things like fish oil, you want to buy from a brand where it's ethically sourced and produced. Make sure there's no fillers, binders, synthetic stuff. This is putting the onus on the consumer now, because now you have to be savvy and reading the box.
Yeah,
so just flip the box over and read it, and if there's anything that you can't pronounce, put the box back or put it back, because it's usually bound with cheaper ingredients.
Yes.
It tends to be the more premium products are obviously more expensive, but that's because they're using high-end quality ingredients. So if someone's buying their supplements from Tesco's, for example, the efficacy of what they are putting into their body is not as high as like the brand I write for. They've got a very high content. You know, we use therapeutic doses. So a therapeutic dose is where you take a higher dose and you can affect a change within the body, but you're doing it in a safe and regulated way. So if you're buying cheaper ones, you'll see the difference in levels will be lower. You're basically you're not touching the sides. Yeah,
because I made that mistake. I got the creatine powder is kind of shit. It's just like, it's like chalk you're drinking. Like, it's not nice. I got creatine jelly babies.
Okay.
And then I was like, wow, these are really good. And then all of a sudden I looked at the back and I was like, oh, sugar. There's lots of sugar in these. And then I was like, there's very minimal creatine in these. So that actually it's not great.
Yeah.
I find it hard. I find it annoying that the regulation doesn't cut those companies out that are doing it.
They will eventually. I think it'll become too difficult for them to, because there's more premium products coming, and we're certainly learning that consumers are more savvy. They're more educated. The more educational content we're putting out, the more they're learning about, I didn't know that a lot of cheaper supplements have got fillers, binders, excipients, things in it that you don't want to be putting in your body. So they're more educated. And if you go into like a shop like Holland and Barrett, where you're faced with infinite choices, how do you as a consumer, how do you know which one to pick? So as a brand, they're obviously working on that to get their brand in front of people, but educating yourself. I think in the age of information, ignorance is a choice. Really, that's where we're at.
I would say that's a brilliant quote.
That's not mine.
It's a brilliant. It's a brilliant
claim that.
But also when you have, and I'm not saying this is right again, but ChatGPT is like amazing. See,
it gets things wrong.
It does get things wrong. It 100% gets things wrong. But if you are looking for quick advice, as long as you fact check it, and trust me, I've gone on ChatGPT and been like, that's bullshit. Like, that's not right. I know that's not right. So as long as you fact check it, but it could be your source of quick information if you need advice. Yeah. I'm not saying that's the way to go always.
It's a starting point. Yeah.
It's a start. Is this McDonald's burger I'm eating healthy? It's probably good. It's probably going to give you the facts. Yeah. It's not going to say yes or no. It's going to say, well, it has this amount of carbs in it and it has this amount of this in it. So yeah, I think ChatGPT in the age of information, like, you should be, I suppose it comes back to like, what is your health worth to you? Yeah. Like, is it worth your time? It should be. Is it worth paying a little bit more of a premium for supplements that are good? to me it is that I mean, you saw the kitchen through there. Like I've got supplements and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think it's knowing how much your health is worth.
Yeah.
And it's sad that it takes people getting to the point where they are critically ill to think, fuck, actually I had such a good life. Like that was incredible.
Yeah.
I had no worries, and then all of a sudden I've got this issue because
there's usually that line in the sand where and sadly for a lot of people it's the chronic stress, so it's the way that we live, it's the compounding stress of young kids, aging parents, ill parents, money worries, a job you hate, all of those things building on top of each other, massive societal pressure to succeed. Like actually asking yourself, what does success actually look like? Because it's definitely not what society tells us it is. It's your own definition of success. And then gradually, for me anyway, it was a process of dismantling all the conditioning to find the authenticity. But that's not for the faint-hearted. It's really for the few people who they've either had enough, they've faced enough adversity that they think, oh, there's got to be something more, which was the case for me. Or it's the turning point is a health problem.
Yeah.
Where they're given maybe a diagnosis, and there's people who look to spirituality and quantum physics now. So have you heard of Joe Dispenza?
I haven't, no.
You've not heard of Right, okay. That's a rabbit hole that you will fall down.
What's his name?
Joe Dispenza.
Joe Dispenza.
So he is actually a chiropractor to trade, and he was in a near fatal car accident. The car was T-boned.
Oh my God. And
if I remember rightly, he was really beaten up. He was basically told he wouldn't walk again or work again, as a chiropractor to be told that. And he, when he was in hospital, started to visualise over a long period of time, like I'm just shortening the time frame, but over a period of time, he was visualising being able to walk again, having full function. And through the power of visualisation and rewiring your neurochemistry, he's now shown through studies, through hooking people up to sensors, that people can actually rewire their brain. So where you're saying with using things like psilocybin, it's doing the same thing, but you're sort of hacking into your neurobiology and you're doing it from the inside. And what's happening for people is they're actually reversing chronic disease. And the science community don't like him because he's actually evidencing how powerful the mind is.
It's evidence-based.
Yeah, and he'll run retreats and he'll have people who have been told that they'll never walk again, and they get up out their wheelchair.
Yeah.
Because they're doing a series of meditations. So it's about getting into a certain state, which is alpha. So getting your brain frequencies out of theta, where we are just now conversing. So you can drop down into alpha. You can actually recreate and visualize a new you. And when you do that, it's powerful because all your chemistry and biology gets behind that. So you rewire everything and all your biology.
Yeah.
It's powerful. But I think you have to be open to that. And I think for a lot of people that go to his retreats, it's because they've been told,
there's no other way.
There's nothing we can do for you. Yeah. And they're like, well, shit, okay, let's try this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that. Have you ever read the book The Law of Attraction?
Yes.
It's the same thing. It's like if you think something, it will almost come into its existence because it attracts. I read it when I was away in Harris, actually, and it was like a light bulb moment.
Yeah.
And I do think it's relatively true. Like if you think something for long enough and you act like something for long enough and you truly believe it, eventually you'll get there.
It's about frequency. So he talks about coherence. So when your brain chemistry, your heart has a field. So they've measured it in the Heart Math Institute. Your heart has a frequency. So when all the frequency in your body aligns, it creates what he calls coherence. And when you're in coherence, you then line up with that which so say you visualize a future you that's living differently to how you're living where you want to live, driving the car you want, doing the work that's fulfilling. And you feel the feeling of that has a frequency and a vibration. So when you become internally coherent, you line up with that frequency. So it's like finding say you're listening to Radio 1, but you want to listen to radio too, you'd have to retune to pick up. So we are all beacons that are carrying frequency. So we need to tend to our own vibration and that's where the law of attraction came from, but it's actually deeper than that. It's quantum physics. And it's proven in science. Mm-hmm. And they talk about the law of observation. So the minute you bring awareness to something, so say you have a negative habit that keeps repeating. So I don't know, say you've smoking,
yeah.
The moment you bring awareness to that, you collapse it because you've observed it. So they did it in quantum physics with the two particles that were not near each other. They were a distance apart, and they were observed. They became coherent, even though they were not next to each other. So what that's saying is, when you bring awareness to something, you collapse the timeline. It gets really complicated. But actually it's very simple once you understand that we're all energy and we're all frequency. And that our responsibility is to tend to that.
And you can kind of feel that, like, when you're around certain people.
Yeah, you resonate.
Yeah, and there's like a buzz around them as well. Like there's people that you can hang around with that you just like, you feel energized by.
Yeah.
And then there's people you hang around with.
You get the opposite.
And you get the opposite.
Where you're drained. Get the hell away from me.
Yeah. And I think it's important to surround yourself with the people that radiate that good energy. Like I was filming a project in Iceland with a guy called Chris Howe and Matthew, who are like two incredible YouTubers, and Matthew's Chris's manager. And we met a guy called Gunnar as well, who's Icelandic. He's quite famous in Iceland. And like the moment he arrived, it was like, okay, go. It was like,
buzzing.
Yeah, everyone was really in good spirits, and like everyone was shooting, everyone. And it's just like the energy that all of us together created was brilliant because we're all aligned and we're all going the same direction.
And it feels incredible, doesn't it?
Yeah. You feel like you're truly connected.
Yeah.
And you're also all going in the same direction.
And that's purpose. And that comes from within. It's not something that you didn't create that. You could have curated that group of people, but you didn't know. But all of you are on purpose. You're all aligned, and then you've got this coherence as a group.
Yeah.
And you're right. You can feel off of someone when that's called doing the work, when they do the work of tending to their own vibration.
Yeah.
What that means is they've cleared away all the low vibration stuff. They've dealt with it. And they care more about feeling good. So low vibration individuals want to moan and complain and blame. Someone who's tending to their vibration doesn't do that. They take responsibility, and they've got a higher purpose, they've got a higher vibration, and they will attract the right opportunities, which is where the law of attraction, I think that's a more simplified version of what quantum mechanics is talking about. Yeah.
But I think there's a phase, I might have said this in another podcast, I can't remember. There's a phase in people's journeys where they are heading towards success, and they're starting to become more overdeveloped. So they're leaving behind their old group of friends, but they're not sufficiently developed to have found their new group of friends. So there's this lonely chapter in between.
We all go through it, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the point. A lot of people get to that point and think, fuck, no, I'm going back, because they've lost their clan of people. Whereas actually the people that they were hanging around with are low vibration, and they're probably going to stay in the same level.
Outgrown them, yeah.
Exactly. And then so there's this period in people's lives that when they really want to get somewhere, they really want to be successful in whatever field it is, whatever their purpose is, that they start leaving behind their old group of friends.
Yeah.
And they need to find their new group. And that, I think, for people can really fuck with them.
Yeah, it's that liminal space between the old and the new.
Yeah. And it can really mess with people, because like you need a clan, you need like people around you.
You need a tribe, yeah.
Yeah, you need a tribe. And I see it a lot in quite a few of the young guys that are coming up at the moment in photography and videography. They're like, I'm really miserable traveling alone all the time. And I was like, well, you've got to do it for, like, I did it for 3 years before I actually, it became anything.
Yeah.
So it's like, you kind of need to do that. You need to go through that phase in order to grow.
And to know that you'll come through it, and there's a different level on the other side of it. Yeah, it's kind of formative, isn't it? It's sort of preparing you for what your chosen profession is. It's preparing you and giving you the resilience to withstand things that might happen. But yeah, you're right. And I do, from my own experience, I think only a small percentage of people are have the courage to change their life. Most people are content. Well, they'll say they're content. I would argue that they're not content because they need lots of coping mechanisms to get through their life.
Yeah.
I don't think that's contentment. And their definition of success is maybe skewed too. I think when you go on this journey of personal development and inner development, your definition of success definitely changes.
What's your definition of success?
Alignment, so feeling aligned on purpose. Satisfaction's a big thing for me. So I learned a lot about, you won't have heard of human design. So human design is a sort of framework that was developed in the early 80s, I think it was. A gentleman channeled it, actually. It came to him through a series of visualizations. He channeled it, and it's based around astrology, the I Ching, and a couple other things. So broadly, it's based on your place of birth and your date and time of birth. So I'm what in human design would call a generator. So I'm a sacral generator. So that means that sacrally I've got consistent energy as long as I'm doing work that I'm satisfied with. So the polar opposite of that was that I was in a job that I hated. I was doing admin and felt like trapped in this. There was no creative outlet. There was no way to express myself. So I left that job and now do what I do full time and love what I do. So that's inner alignment for me. And what that means is I don't listen to the noise. I stay in my lane. I don't look at what anyone else is doing, what they're saying, because that pulls me out of my lane and then I get all confused and in my head. So I stay fully in my body as much as I can. And yeah, satisfaction. We all know that feeling of satisfaction. It's like something where you're just like humming along. You're just buzzing, like just a nice, slow buzz. And I'm sure that'll change as I move through different life stages. I'm sure I still want the material things. Like I want material success because for me, they look like external representations of the work I've done internally to overcome childhood conditioning. So my conditioning was I was born into a family that are very quiet, very introverted, and that's almost their identity. And I've become the black sheep of that because I'm sort of going against that. I'm on a podcast. I've written a chapter in a book. I've done things that go against that because I'm trying to undo the conditioning that I was born into because I want to achieve things in my life.
And it shows that you can as well.
Yeah. And that matters to me. That's another value too, is I value growth. To look at something and say, I did that. You know, I overcame something and there's something in my life because I overcame it. But I don't, like I said earlier, I don't think everyone is open to that.
Yeah, well, I think people are so caught, I hate to call it the rat race, but...
Well, it is a rat race.
People are so caught up in the rat race that they forget what their own, where their passion lies, like a lot of the time. And I think that a lot of people are like, well, if I get 10 grand, I'll be happy. If I get 20 grand...
It's never, it's not the thing.
It's numbers.
Or the latest car or the new iPhone or whatever it is. Temporarily, it'll fill a void and then that void just opens up again because at your core, you're not aligned. You're not...
That's exactly it, yeah.
You're out of alignment and you're using external sort of symbols to try and numb that feeling. Like we probably all know people who are just constantly purchasing new things to try and make themselves feel better. But at some point they will recognise, that just doesn't hit the mark anymore.
Yeah. And
I do think the energy that we're in now, like time has sped up infinitely. I don't know if you feel like a day just flies past now in a way that is different. I don't think we can get away with the same level of consumerism. It's not hitting the mark. I do think that people are gradually waking up to the fact that it's just not hitting the mark and there's something that they're missing. And that might be the point at which they start to ask questions about what does it all mean?
Yeah.
Like if they're going to ask the existential question, what is the meaning of life?
Yeah. But I think it's important. It's so important to begin to ask that question.
Yeah.
Because it's a step towards finding what makes you tick. And what makes you tick might be a 9-to-5 job with stability, possibly. And it possibly will be. And I know a lot of people that are very happy working in a job in which they have security, in which they know what they're going to get, in which they're, whatever niche it is. Like I know a lot of people that are very happy in that, but like everyone is different.
Yeah, and that might be because their life outside their job is really rich. They've got hobbies and things that they do.
Exactly.
That their job is just a job. They just turn up, do the job, they get paid, but some of us derive meaning from what we do. Is it, what you do and what I do is a calling. It's almost a vocation. It's not something that I can just turn off. It's there all the time. And we were talking earlier about creating a life that you don't need to take a holiday from. That has been my mission, and I'm still working on that. So I don't ever feel like I need to take time away from it. It's always with me because it's my mission to share information, to help people think in a different way. I'm quite often told, like if I do a talk or I meet someone, I'll often hear, God, you really made me think. Well, that's all I want. If I've made you think differently, then I've cracked the door open a little bit and you might make a different choice. Yeah.
And when's this podcast coming?
So
I'm getting it live.
Well, I've got a name. I've got a concept. Okay. So I just need to, it really is just I just need to register some kind of platform. Because I did a short course. So it's, like you were saying earlier, there's no real barriers to it. It's quite simple. I can set it up. So yeah. Okay. Are you making me put a date?
Yes. Well, honestly, I think that you'd love it.
Yeah.
I really do. And it's firstly, you meet incredible people. You build an amazing network of people, because you, over an hour or two of talking to someone, or 3, whatever it is, without phones, normally speaking, you get to know that, like, you really get to know people. So you build that incredible community, you have incredible conversations, meet incredible people, and you learn. And like, it's such a hack. Like, I need to learn about marketing because I'm struggling with marketing the company. I'll get in, Andrew Dobie, who's a marketing director.
And you'll learn.
And he goes, do this. And I'm like, right, okay. You're the guy. So it's such a hack that it is a genuine hack. And it's such an important thing to do, to spread the information and the kind of research that you're doing in your field as well.
And people want to talk. They want to share their story, and because I'm certainly like this. I make sense of something as I talk it out.
Yeah. And
for a lot of us, if we are disconnected, or we're working remotely, or we're on our own, that's a lot of time to spend on your own to process stuff. If you can talk to someone and just hear it played out, and if you're fortunate to have a really good listener, someone who doesn't just keep jumping in, who is actively listening, you can answer a lot of your own questions just by talking.
Yeah.
And they're not saying very much. You're just hearing yourself answer your own questions. I think a lot of people are craving community and reconnecting, but maybe we're reconnecting digitally, if that makes sense. So we can build community. Obviously we want in-person community as much as possible, but you can have a podcast guest who's on the other side of the world and never have met them, but you're still building some kind of connection with them.
Well, Chris Howe is a perfect example. He's from Canada, so he's in Toronto, but we did a podcast together, and then he came to Iceland to film a project. So like, it is that worldwide community, which is pretty awesome. There's a technique you can use, by the way, you'll find this interesting. We had an FBI agent on called Michelle Kelly, and she was a hostage negotiator. It's really cool. So she describes this technique of mirroring. So if you were to say to me, I was quite sad today, and I'd be like, quite sad? And then you go, well, yeah. And then you start opening up more. And all that you need to do as the host is repeat the last 2 things that you had said.
Guest to open up.
Exactly. And it's the best technique I've ever learned.
Yeah.
And like, you see, especially when I'm in kind of management, when you're talking to people and maybe they are going through an issue or they're struggling to verbalize something, if you just keep stepping in that direction, eventually it'll all come out.
Yeah.
And it's a really good technique to use.
Interesting.
And it's not something like you're hacking or manipulating.
The other person's unaware of it because it's just genuine rapport that you're building really with the person. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And all you're doing is repeating the last two, and then they just go a bit further.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a trigger for them to go, oh, let's look a bit deeper into this. Why am I thinking that way? I am sad. Okay, right. Okay, why am I sad? Oh, I ate a pizza this morning. Oh, well, you know. So it's maybe that's the way that...
Start self-coaching. So you end up with this, I've kind of got this inner coach where I'm just like, I can coach myself through something. I am a talker-outer. I do make my husband's ears bleed. It's like, can we just get over this now? Yeah.
Well, everyone's different. I suppose everyone's different and they kind of deal with things in different ways. That has been almost 2 hours, so wow. I don't want to keep you too long. So thank you so much for coming
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it. And what's the... so you went over your website or the website you're writing on?
So I write for Revive Active, which is just reviveactive.com.
Yeah.
My own website, which people can find more about nutrigenomics on there, is gennanelson.com. And if you just go to work with me, there's a nutrigenomics page. All the prices and how to get that ball rolling, it's all on there. My Substack, where I'm writing more about blending science and soul together, so more of what we were talking about, meditation and inner work, but actually bringing some science into it. That's under my name, but the publication's called The Undoing. So The Undoing is like the antidote to the doing, because I seriously dislike the hustle culture. So I feel like I'm offering the antidote to the doing. So that's called The Undoing. And I guess the podcast
is coming.
To be decided. Watch the space.
Yeah. We'll put it on the footer of your website when you get it.
Yeah.
Make sure you put it on the footer of your website. And that will come. And then what's your Instagram? It is The Undoing, isn't it?
It's The Undoing, yeah.
Yeah. So is it just /
Sorry, this is The Undoing.
This is The Undoing.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's your Instagram handle as well. Good. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.